All right. Good Saturday morning, everybody. My name's Sean Newman, Sports Card Nation podcast, episode 244 of this show, which is Hobby Hotline. Every Saturday morning, this time, 11 a.m. Eastern, 8 a.m. Pacific, and the first Tuesday of every month at 9 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. Pacific time. So, enough of me. I want to welcome my cohorts on today's episode. To the right on the top of your screen, Mr. Junk Wax Hero, Mike, welcome.
Thanks, John. Appreciate being here. I've only done this twice before, but really enjoy it. So I'm glad to be back.
And we're glad to have you, as I told you, off screen. And below us, only on the screen, as I always say, the man that needs no introduction, but I'm going to give him one just the same. Dr. James Beckett. Good morning, sir.
When can I get to the top screen?
Let me see if I can. I'm scared to mess with these controls.
Put me
Let's
on
see.
the bottom. I'm happy to be there.
No, we don't want to do that. That's. We can do that, but that you don't want my face any bigger.
No worries.
All right. First thing I want to do, I know it was a few days ago, but I want to wish Mr. Beckett a happy birthday to you, sir. And I know I texted it to you, but I wanted to, when we have a birthday around a show date, I wanted to and let everyone else know, wish Dr. Jim a very happy birthday. He's 50 years old, like me, this week. So,
Happy birthday.
Thank you. That cupcake looks pretty tantalizing.
if it was only real. Well, I'll start off again. Happy birthday, Dr. Jim. Did you do anything either card related or how'd you celebrate it?
I definitely didn't do anything card related. No, I just had a quiet celebration with my wife and my brother and his wife, and we went out and had a little nice time. So, guys, when you get older, you don't want to be having these big celebrations all the time. You want to stop counting.
Yeah, well, that's what I do. Or you know how I know I'm old, Dr. Jim, is when I got to start doing math with your birth year and the current year. That's how you know when you forget how old you are and you got to do the math. So, that's like you said. My dad, who's I know Dr. Jim spoke to my dad on his Father's Day episode. My dad's 84. And like he says, there's only one way to stop getting old, and he's not a big fan of that way. So that's how I try to look at it. And another year, and hopefully a year smarter. Probably in your case, maybe not in mine. But again, happy birthday!
Thank
All
you.
right, guys. Yeah, go ahead. I didn't mean to cut you.
Oh, thanks. I appreciate
All right, the first topic we're going to dive into. I know it's familiar territory for you, Dr. Jim, with your old company and the gentleman uh, you know, uh, Kunal Chopra, no longer the CEO, but Beckett's tabbed their new guy to lead them. It's a familiar face to the company in Kevin Isaacson. He's been there before. He's run the industry summit for 6 years, and he's a hobby guy, right? That was the big criticism of the previous hire that they went outside the hobby. I was one of those folks, waving that pennant or saying that. I was, rooting for him in the sense that I hope it would have paid off, but I don't think it did, in my opinion. We'll start with you, Dr. Jim. I mean, Mr. Isaacson here. What are your thoughts?
I've known Kevin for almost 30 years, and he's a serious hobbyist, real sharp guy. Really cares about the industry. First knew him as a competitor because he was one of the leaders at Krause Publications, SCD. That was our big rival back in the 80s and 90s. And so they didn't ask me about whether I approve of Kevin, but I certainly do. I think Canal was an attempt to bring some additional technology, but Kevin is not necessarily back to the basics because he's a very creative guy, but they basically did a nationwide search for somebody with hobby experience that had less hair than me. And Kevin rose to the top. So I fully approve, and I'm looking forward to being helpful to Kevin and to the company is in this new thing. I think the company has not been hitting on all cylinders, and bringing in Kunal was an attempt to really uh, get back to some of the technology excellence, but we still have to have the hobby excellence too.
I got to ask you, Dr. Jim, I don't know even if you could, did you have any say in this? Were you asked for some candidates or who you thought might be someone they should look at?
No, I mean, I'd be nervous about getting a call about that.
Yeah.
I am not available, so I was not. A lot of times when these headhunters call you, if you know anybody, it's also, are you interested? I'm not interested, but I am interested in the right person being selected. I think Kevin's the right guy for this time. So no, they didn't call me, but I've been I still am in contact with a lot of my guys I used to work with, and I think people are pleased, and they should be.
Yeah. We'll go to Mike. Mike, just from a hobby perspective, replacing someone not from the hobby, there were some missteps. We all know we don't have to throw them back out there. They were out there for everyone to see. Your feelings while we may not know them in the same vein that Dr. Jim does, your thoughts on maybe the direction that Beckett's going, and maybe what you'd like to see as a hobbyist with new leadership.
Yeah. So the most important thing I think is that Dr. Beckett knows him, likes him, approves of him, knows that he's going to be good for the business is a great first step for Beckett right now. I look at his background, and he has a deep business background and a deep hobby background, and it looks like a publishing background, interestingly too. Now that's old legacy media, but I thought that was pretty interesting, and I'm excited to see what they do. They obviously the last few years have slipped down, lost some market share. I'd love to see more competition for PSA, and I'd love to see them gain some of that market share back.
Yeah, no doubt, no doubt. We got a question here for Dr. Jim, and it's one that I like personally. So I'm gonna put it up here from Vintage Card Collector. He asked Dr. Beckett, "What would you do with the grading scale at BGS?" So you're the guy, and would you change it? What would be your angle there?
I could take the rest of the show, and basically, I answered that question in writing for Kevin and Jeremy, basically, and I wrote it out, sent it to them. Again, they're surveying lots of people, but I am one person that wanted to weigh in with some detail. So it's not appropriate for me to say what that is. I don't know if they'll use. Uh, but I weighed in and I said, this is what I would do. So I answered exactly that question. And we'll see what they do because I'm not the boss anymore, but I certainly care. I care about the brand, I care about the people, and I care about the hobby. So
Yeah,
great question. And we'll see when they announce. We'll see if they do what I recommended, or maybe they had some other better ideas. But I know exactly what I would do, and I told them.
yeah. Well, I'll put Mike. Mike, what would you change as far as their grading division, whether it be the grading scale itself or just in general?
Wow, put me on the spot. So I actually like the old grading scale. I guess it's back to the new grading scale again after the brief change. I like that tens are harder to get. At PSA, it's pretty easy to get a 10. At BGS, it's more difficult, and they're worth more money. And the 10 should be elite. The 9.5 I like a lot. You can't get a 9.5 at PSA. So I think they should Why change it after 20 some odd years, 25 years, or however long BGS has been around? Yeah, I think that they should leave it as it was, and now I guess is still.
Yeah, we'll have to see. I mean, I'll go back to Dr. Jim. Like you said, you know Kevin for 30 years. Is he going to be a guy that jumps in the the pilot seat and starts flying the plane right away? How would you describe his management skills? Is he a hands-on guy, going to do stuff quickly, or what should we expect style-wise from Kevin Isaacson?
Well, he's worked with the company for more than a decade, I think, off and on, in various roles, but a lot of them been consulting. And so he's a big strategy guy, but he's plenty decisive when he needs to be. He's willing to make the call if it's even if everybody's not unanimously on board. He calls it like he sees it. So I mean, a good executive needs to do that. It's not a democracy. It's not a democracy. He's the leader, and I'm available, and I think I'll have more contact with him than I have had with all the previous CEOs, other than Peter, the first one that I worked with when I was still in the building. So I'm looking forward to it, guys. But Kevin's going to have his own style. I will say this. I mean, he's well, one of the challenges of any executive or any person is, who do you trust? And if you come in, what Logan's point, about being in the hobby, or it's been made several times, that being in the hobby, if you've been in the hobby, you already know the vernacular, and you kind of have an idea of who you can trust, who to trust. And I think somebody coming in from the outside, they don't know who to trust. 'Cause you can't take a popular vote. Some people really have their finger on the pulse. I think Kevin knows who to trust, and I'm trustworthy. Obviously, you guys are trustworthy. I think he's going to have a good sense of who in the company and who outside the company are trustworthy, and I think that's going to really go a long way toward giving him a good ride as the leader.
Do you think he comes in though? Are we going to see immediate sort of changes or different things, or is he going to kind of assess where the company's at? How would you describe how fast we might notice a difference?
He got picked because he already had assessed
Yeah.
it.
Okay,
He
all right.
knows what he's going to do, but even when you're a decisive executive, it's like if you go to a counselor and you got a problem, the gifted counselor doesn't hit you with the solution immediately. They let you stew on it for a while, and then at the appropriate time, they say, "Okay, here's the thing." And a good executive is the same thing. He's got a sense of what he wants to do, but he's gonna do the right timing. But like I said, he's gonna make sure the other voices in the room are heard and not dismissed, and then he'll move forward. He'll take bold action, but that doesn't have to be day one when he comes in.
One of the things, I got asked on a Q&A type of deal that I do for Sports Card Nation. Someone asked me, what would Beckett have to do, to kind of gain market share back, like Mike referred to, or be more relevant. I know no one necessarily likes to do it in the grading space as far as the grading companies, but my answer to that was really lower submission prices to get a lot more cards coming your way, to get those videos on YouTube of people getting their cards back and revealing them, getting that Beckett company name back out there more than it is in its current state. Mike, I mean, your thoughts on that take? Do you agree? What, or would you add to that? What else could they do?
Yeah, I think SGC is doing some really good things right now with really cheap, probably loss leader type of prices on their 2023 slabs that they're doing. They're charging $9 per slab, and I don't think they're making any money off those, but it's gaining market share for them. I think that Beckett could do things like that. I also, uh, no offense, Dr. Beckett, I'm not a fan of the label that BGS uses, that where it's a little off center. You've got the the great Beckett logo on the side, and then the label is to the side of that, which I don't think looks great. And I wonder if that's part of why people aren't using Beckett that often. I think the slabs look awesome. Other than that, it just looks off center at the top. And I think last year they kind of rolled out a new logo and slab look, and then rolled it back for some reason. So I'd be interested in seeing a change like that too.
Listen, their slabs. I will say this, and I have Beckett graded cards. They're probably the built. They're built like a tank, right? Like I have like no fear if I was to drop one. They're thick. I think because of their size, people either love that fact or don't love that fact, right? PSAs are really thin. I always get nervous when I'm handling that in relevance to SGC and Beckett. But Beckett, I think, is the most protected. I know, Dr. Jim, you have a lot of obviously Beckett graded stuff. It's right behind you. We can see it in the frame. I mean, personally, would you do anything different slab wise, or are you really content where it's at?
Well, I'm not I'm not the decision maker, and I'm not the typical customer. What the problem is in the industry right now is with my old company is that there's confusion, and there's probably some friction there. And lowering the price is one way to approach some of those things, but they need to reduce the confusion about where they're headed, and they need to reduce the friction and make it easy for people to use their products. The problem is change is difficult in our industry, and any change, I've never seen a change in our industry that was universally accepted. And everybody said, oh, that's 100%, that's the right thing to do. So the question is, if you make a change, who's going to be upset with that change? Uh, and it's probably not good to upset your best customers. On the other hand, your best customers even are not always right. Sometimes change just needs to come. So it's tricky. I think Kevin is looking at all those things, but he's going to be much more in consultation with Jeremy and Bill and Dave and the other senior leadership of the grading to make sure they're making good choices and they're trusting the right people. Again, some customers are really savvy and can give great feedback, and others are going to be more self-serving as I want you to do this. Uh, Again, the slabs, the criticism is they're too heavy, they're too solid, they're too secure. Well, that's a good criticism in one sense if you drop it. But if you're lugging a couple hundred slabs around, you don't have to do weightlifting that day. You've already got your workout.
Well, I like that they're protecting the card. I guess the negative is, if you're doing a show as a dealer, as I do sometimes, your case is going to hold less because they're thicker, right? And I guess, like you said, Doctor Jim, if that's your worst complaint, then it is what it is. I rather have more protection than I can carry an extra case or make a
I,
with a hand truck.
there's trade-offs. There's
Yeah,
trade-offs in everything you do, and if you lower the price, there's some trade-offs with that. People generally would like that, but in order to be able to continue to innovate, companies need to be profitable, and you can't have everything be a loss leader.
yep, yep. One last one, we'll kind of close out this. Orlando is asking. He says Dr. Beckett gave us great speech to new graders. Can you speak about that?
I can speak to that. I put that on my, the the answer to the question of what I would do 2 months ago. I had an episode of my podcast where I talked about 9.5 and kind of my feelings
Yep,
about the BGS 9.5. And then a little while ago, not very long ago, I gave a speech to some of the grading trainees, and I can speak about that because what I put in the podcast was not the speech to the graders. It was excerpts and outtakes and heavily edited because I really was proverbially preaching to the choir. These were people that were in the company, and I don't want some of those remarks to be made public. But what I thought could be made public, I put on my podcast, and people seem to like that. My whole point was that grading has always been part of my collecting experience, even though we didn't start BGS until 1999, and I'd been involved in the hobby for decades before that. Uh, and a grading is a skill and an art, And if it's completely a skill, I just don't think it's just a skill. So anyway, you'd have to listen to this. I'm not going to say more about that because the other stuff I said about it was for private consumption of those people in the room.
All right, fair enough. And like you said, Sports Card Insights, you can get a lot of those takes. It's a great show, Monday, Wednesday, Friday. Now it's definitely obviously on my rotation. So let's go into something that kind of. Oh, go ahead, Dr. Jim.
A Sports Card Radio. I used to listen to them. I was just wondering, isn't the guy to bring BGS back to the promised land? What is the promised land in his or their opinion for BGS? To be number two. My promised land for BGS is to be number one, but I'm not the guy anymore. But that's always my goal, to be to be the market leader in some respects. So I'm just wondering what is meant by that. It is a nice thought that Kevin, I think, is going to do a really good job. But is he saying that won't be enough, or yeah, we'll see.
Yeah, well, he's saying he isn't. Like so, like you said, like
I love specific criticism. If there's a way I can help Kevin, get to the promised land, that's the nice thought to me. And
yeah,
I think Kevin is receptive to advice and counsel from other people in the hobby that have a lot of experience and are willing to share what's best for the whole industry.
I think it would be a great conversation between you, Dr. Jim, and Ryan or Colin of Sports Card Radio. I'd watch that.
The Tadards, yeah, that would be really interesting. I don't know if I'm on their speed dial, but I don't. The whole thing there is that anything is possible. Uh, some things are less likely than others, but you know those guys realize that controversy sells. And so when I was in charge of Beckett and BGS, I didn't want to be the controversial one. I wanted to be the one that just continues to innovate and do the right thing. But if they're saying that Kevin needs to be more controversial, I think we've had enough controversy with BGS in the last few months. I think we need to get to some smooth sailing and see where that takes us.
yeah, and I'd be curious if they want to put in the who would be a guy they would tab if they had that sort of power. I want to put a comment up here from Zach Pierce, guys. It says, I like Beckett with the subgrades. Never understand why people don't embrace them more. I like those too. And then they went to like you pay for them sort of policy. I think that should be standard with the grade. Uh, I think it's huge to know what it was that maybe gave that grade, or what it was that maybe cost a higher grade, and why you got a grade. And I have obviously Beckett graded cards with subgrades on it, and it's right there for you to see what each aspect of the card, the surface, corners, edging, and all that stuff got, and why. And so why that card got that grade. So I'm a fan of the subgrades. I wish I won't even just contain it to Beckett. I wish most of the grading card companies would do something like that. That way, you're never going to get an explanation from the graders themselves why they came up with their assessment, but it's the closest, it's the next best thing to that is having those subgrades. They want you back. Or Orlando says, come back there, Dr. Jim. So
If elected, I will not serve. I'm a consultant. I want to be helpful, but I'm not looking for a job. I'm happy to help Kevin.
well, it's nice to hear you say, I'll get Mike's take. It's nice to hear you say that there is some open lines of communication. You've known them a long time. I think anyone would say it's nice when their voice, you feel your voice is being heard. You started that company. You're still in the hobby, like the line we always use, right? Your finger's still on the pulse as well. Mike, your thoughts on sort of that open lines with Dr. Jim and the new leadership.
Yeah, like I said before, I love that Dr. Jim approves of Kevin, that he has an open line with him, that he's consulting for Beckett. I want to step away from that for a minute and just put up Mangini's comment because I think it's brilliant as always. Add an additional subgrade for eye appeal. Yes, I love. I think eye appeal should be more important in a card's grade. I've talked about this a lot. You can take a 1 and have it look better than a 5 sometimes.
Yeah. I have a Jackie over my shoulder. I feel sort of fits that description. Mike PWCC does that with their auctions. They have where they'll put an eye appeal assessment on a card in their auction. I'm not opposed to that either, along with subgrades. So there's a lot of things. I know grading's not new. It's been around a while. It's going to be here forever, whether you don't like it, even as five foul ball says it's a scam. I don't agree. I think it's important, and it's going to be here whether you like it in foul five balls case, or you do or you don't in his case, and you do in a lot of other cases. So it's going to be around. So the best we can make it, right? That's the important thing. So let's move on. Any last comments before we?
I had a proposal for that, not exactly that, but integrating eye appeal into the grading. Not in that way, but I've already suggested that. In a certain,
Yeah,
I'm not going to disclose what it is, but it's eye appeal is a thing. It is a thing,
yeah,
and
yeah.
it's difficult to quantify, but it's definitely noticed. As Mike was saying, some ones are better than fives at arm's length.
Yep. No doubt. All right. The next now, isn't that really new in the hobby news cycle? It's a couple weeks old, guys, but I actually haven't really weighed in, and I think it kind of goes to tags along with the grading theme. There you see a screenshot. Evan Mathis, former NFL player and dealer now, and vintage guy, posted a video. I believe it was TikTok or wherever, or probably multiple places, where he literally showed him, as you see here, trimming an off-center 1965 Topps card. He also did his best QVC impression, giving where you could buy all the tools, including the trimmer itself, to do this, and basically advocated that this was okay. He compared it to the art world and restoring photos. And why not make your card, if it still can remain the same size, the legal size? That was his point. And you can make it a better condition card. Why not? And he went on, I believe, Sports Card Nonsense. They went after him, and he basically said it's the grading. He really targeted PSA, but said it was the grading cards company's fault for not catching all these, and that he basically said, if you think I'm the only one doing it, you are very, very wrong. This is really a rampant thing. And so I'm just was, the poster boy for coming out and saying, I don't think it's as bad as a lot of other people do. Again, I'm going to start here with Dr. Jim. Obviously, vintage cards, and the history of these things. Um, I'm sure you followed this story. Kind of your assessment, your thoughts on some of his takes here.
My thoughts are that most people have a very polarizing opinion of this topic right from the get-go, and yet in a democratic society, you ought to, when things are not illegal, you ought to be able to argue or debate both sides of it. Evan is not doing anything illegal, and he is correct in the sense that the grading companies are we're paying money to the grading companies to make this determination, and they apparently need to get better at it. I know it's a challenge for BGS. There's some proprietary things they look at, but when an oversized card is trimmed, it's especially tricky, especially tricky. And so, um, again, there's nothing illegal, and if he submits it and it gets through, he's telling people it's caveat emptor, it's buyer beware, that this is going on, and it's not right for an altered card to be sold as unaltered. And so my hope is that every altered card is caught. And I also have a plan for that, but again, that I've suggested to the Beckett leadership, because I think it's an increasing problem. I think it's trending, and I think Evan is picking up on that. It's a worse problem than we think. It's not just PSA. In fact, what you wonder about is if people are trimming cards, they're not sending to the off-brand grading services, because they're sending them to the leading grading services. Because then if it gets through, and if it doesn't get through, they could try another one, or they could try. And again, PSA is saying they're going to be having more ability to detect resubmittals. So guys, I think this is here to stay. Again, there's nothing illegal. There's nothing, even if you intentionally trim it and do all the stuff that he did. If you send it in and get it graded and it's slabbed as authentic and you get a numerical grade, then that's already happening. And there's no crime there.
Yeah, I think
The pushback is when somebody gets the card, the end user gets it, and they think, for whatever reason, I want to crack that out and get a better grade or go to a different grading company. And then when it gets a fresh review, the new grading company, again, this has happened too, says, hey, this has been trimmed. That's problematic. But if it gets through and you put it in your collection, again, there's no crime here. There's no crime here.
I think it's a moral issue. You're right. I don't think, Evan Mathis is not going to get arrested. Police aren't going to watch the video, or the FBI, and knock on his door with a warrant. I think it's a moral issue. Mike, I mean, your thoughts on this whole, you have graded cards, I have graded cards. Your take on this whole thing.
Yeah, to some extent, I agree with Dr. Beckett. There was just a recent controversy earlier this year, I think, where PWCC purchased a Steph Curry rookie I think it was in a BGS slab, and then they cracked it. There was an issue with chain of custody, and then they sent it off to PSA, and PSA said it was trimmed. Now, I think it's PWCC is suing Beckett over claiming that it was a good card, when actually PWCC cracked it, and they could have been the ones who trimmed it. So who knows? But I think the problem becomes not in me buying a PSA graded slab that's trimmed. It's if you trim a card, you send it off to PSA, PSA says there's evidence of trimming, and then you try to sell that card raw as if it's fine. And I look at it and say, well, this looks like a PSA 10, and I buy it thinking that I'm going to grade it, which is highly unlikely. But then I send it off to get graded, and now this is at least the second time it's been sent off, and that happens all the time.
Yeah, vintage card
Yeah, thank you, vintage card collector.
Thank you. That's We got fact checkers, and that's important. It is all.
Yeah.
Yep, and I knew that. I didn't want to stop you. Yeah, it. You make a great point, right? If it gets back, you crack it, and then I buy it, right? I don't know the exact number. Evan Mathis said something like 80% of PSA 9 vintage cards of significance are probably trimmed. That seems like a crazy number to me. That 8 out of 10 cards that fit that category are of the trim variety. I mean, what do you think of that, Mike? To me, that seems like it's just a high. I'm not saying there aren't some, but 80% seems a little over the top.
I'm sorry, I was laughing at Pepino Man's comment. I completely missed your question.
Well, Evan Mathis, I think he made a statement to say 80% of high grade, PSA nines or nines of of significant vintage cards have been altered in some way to get that grade. That only 20% got them the natural way by uh, just keeping them in mint form from opening the pack. He's saying 8 out of 10. I think that number is high. While that percentage is high, I don't think it's is that much.
Significant, so like pre-1960 vintage, 80% that are nines or above. I would believe that. It's probably not that high, but you also have tightening standards in the last 20 years or so. I think a lot of these cards that were graded in the early 90s, they were graded with easier standards, and that's why you still see them with the same old slab, because they don't want to send them in for regrading. So if somebody thinks it's 90%, yeah, it could be. If you're getting a 9 or a 10 on a card from the 50s or earlier, yeah, it could be.
Well, what if they're exaggerating? What if it's 40%, 30%, 20%, even
Still a lot.
10%? It's still a problem. And what it does, though, is that there's two things that collectors are, fool me once, shame on you, fool me twice, shame on me. There's a situation where if dealers keep trimming cards, sending them in, getting them rejected, and then selling them raw at their table at a show, they're going to get a reputation for doing that, and that ought to be bad for their business. And for collectors that are paying huge premiums for nines of very difficult, expensive, even commons from even the 60s and the 50s, but especially in the 50s where there were a lot of oversized cards, relatively speaking. So if it's an oversized card, I'm not saying it's 80%, but it's not negligible. And so what has to happen, guys, I think, in the consumer behavior is that the premiums for these super high grades, these almost unreasonably high grades for 52 tops, if you filtered that with there's an 80% chance this is trimmed, I can't reslab it. I can't take even a chance for that. Nobody would reslab if 80% of the nines. Of course, why would you anyway? So yeah, I think consumer behavior is going to change, and there'll be a reduced premium for these exceptionally high grades on the 50s cards.
Yeah, here's a comment. Go ahead, Mike. Go ahead.
I think in comic books and magazines, they have a special designation for restored comics and magazines, which we don't have yet from a grading company for cards.
Well, if they're altered, you'll see it say authentic altered, meaning I just had a card come back from a submission for someone else. It was a Beam Team card. It wasn't even a vintage card, unless you consider 1992 Stadium Club vintage. That was colored. Someone took a marker to the black part, and probably tried to hide some chipping, some edging issues. And that card was slabbed as authentic, altered, colored.
But you don't get a grade. Whereas, so you've got
no, you're right.
Here. Yeah, in the art and comic book world, alterations are disclosed, and those are they're I assume also caught by the grading company, and they will get a grade, a number grade, and then there's a separate column in the grading in the pop report saying this is a altered or restored comic book, and it's an 8 or something like that.
Yeah. But obviously, it'll be lesser valued than one that doesn't have the restored designation. So, I mean, you would like to see that, and is that what you're trying to say? Is like there's a place in the hobby for that? It's just going to be a lesser value attached to it.
Yeah, it's like the old PSA qualifiers on their slabs. You'd get an 8 with a mark or a 7 off center. If you know what you're buying, I don't see why not.
Yeah. Okay. Dr. Beckett, so someone,
Well,
your take on that?
I'm just saying, but PSA almost is teeing it up. If I'd buy again if I was unscrupulous, I'd buy every OC PSA card that I could somehow have an app on my phone that would be able to detect if the card was oversized, left to right
Yeah.
or top to bottom, whatever the off centering problem is. And anybody unscrupulous, because you have to have both. You have to have this. It's an off-centering defect that you could fix with trimming, but you have to have enough, and not just the pressing, because that's minimal, but the ability to take a card that's slightly oversized and shave off on the extra big side. So it's, again, people are doing this, and I wish they weren't, but we don't live in a perfect world, and I hope that the card grading companies, all of them, can catch this,
Yeah.
and then
Here's
they
a
don't,
Well,
they don't
go ahead, Doctor.
have as much if they catch it. Except there's no.
Couple comments. Stukes says a dealer once told me he sent a trim 1954 Topps card to PSA and got a PSA 9. It was one of the iconic cards from 1954. And like you said, I don't think anyone is debating that this is going on, right? It's, here's a comment from Philly Joe. Grading is just an opinion. Trimming, no, not illegal. It's shady because the trimmer is trying to increase the card's value. So some another question I see I want to tackle here. Mad City Brew says, "What is worse for the hobby, trimming cards or cracking slabs to get regraded, or both?" I'll answer that real quick. I'll keep my answer short and sweet. Uh, I think trimming's worse because you're physically altering the card. Cracking and regrading is just doing this and hoping a different guy or person gives you a higher grade than you previously got. So to me, trimming is worse. You guys disagree or agree?
Guys, people are going to do what they're going to do. They're not going to be trimming cards if it's of risk to them to devalue the card. They're the expected value of the trimming activity is that they are going to increase the value of the card. If they get caught, then they they have to have an outlet for the trimmed card, and usually that means they're going to send it to another grading company. But if they send it to 3 grading companies and all of them reject it, they're now out the grading fee, and they're going to say, "Hey, this business isn't as simple as I thought. When I trimmed the card, I had a card that was off centered. I could have sold, and now by trimming it, I've made it less sellable, and I have to dump it." And cracking slabs, same thing. If you keep cracking the slabs and sending it in and paying grading fees, and as the
Yep.
grading companies get more sophisticated in their ability to detect if it's resubmitted to PSA again, or that they cooperate amongst themselves that, hey, this is the same submitter that's going around the horn doing all of them, then if it becomes bad business for the bad guys, they move on to something else. So cracking is and resubmitting is apparently lucrative, and trimming is apparently lucrative. I don't want it to be lucrative. I want the bad guys to get punished, and I want it to be a money losing proposition. When you doctor a card, you've reduced its value if you get caught, and I want them to get caught.
Comment from Pepino Man. He said, "I bet that Mathis Circle Hobby Friends 80% of their cards are trimmed, so he assumes that circle is like that of the entire hobby, and that's where that number comes from." A little lighthearted. Let's Korean Cardboard asked if we will all be attending the national. I am. Mike gives a thumbs up, and I know Dr. Jim's the only one of us on the screen who's been to every one that's ever happened, and I look forward to him keeping that streak going. So yes, for sure. So let's see. HTC notes a card is hand cut if it's cut from a sheet. AKA 1984 Nestle, some of the old boxing strip cards, same thing. So, Mangini, there are so many bad actors in the hobby. We need to prop up good people and dealers. We need to have trust again. I agree. I agree. And I don't even like the term actors. I posted something on my social medias. I don't even want good actors in the hobby. I just want good people being themselves. And,
Okay, so
acting's for the movies.
you're saying the hobby is the actors.
No, I'm saying the hobby. We don't need actors. If they want to collect and go to shows and do research like Adam Sandler, those are the kind of actors
The hobby,
we
the
need.
hobby is the acting people.
If they collect and they want to be part of the hobby, sure. I don't. Acting means you're being someone you're not, right? That's the connotation to it. And so I'm not even a good actor. I like to just think I'm a good hobbyist, and so I don't want any actors unless they're collecting and enjoying the hobby as we all do. Mike, your kind of take on that, there as a content creator yourself.
About what specifically, though?
Just good. Someone said we need good actors in the hobby. I say we just need good people. It's semantics, but
Yeah, I think good actors, good people. I take them both the same way. Good. We need more good people.
yeah,
I think we've got some great comments from a lot of people here. John Keating, John Mangini, sorry, with some good comments about
yeah.
collectors and reslabbers. There's an influx of investors in the last 3 or 4 years. I think it's coming down to some extent, which is good. But yeah, more collectors.
Stokes, here's a comment with this, and then we're going to go on to our last topic. He says, can the grading companies mark the trim or doctored card so the card will always be known as a trimmed or doctored card? I don't think you can. Now you're messing with someone else's card, like put like a hole punch in it, or some kind of maybe stamp or what, however you do it, you're altering someone's card. Uh, I don't see that as a possibility. It'd be nice. It's wishful thinking. I'm not saying I'm completely opposed to it. It just opens up a Pandora's box. There'd be lawsuits pertaining to stuff like that.
Well, you guys know by now I'm an idea guy, so I have an idea for that too. So I proposed that, but not to put the dot on that, the invisible dot, but a way to nip that in the bud. So we'll see. I mean, like I said, Kevin is going to hit the ground running, but he's going to have a lot of sludge dealing with my ideas that I'm throwing his way. But there are problems in the hobby, and I think they can be solved. And that's one that I think is tricky, but it can be solved.
Yeah. No, I think there are solutions to almost every problem, right? It's just finding them and the right people to do it. So there was a hobby there was a comment I wanted to use here. I can't find. I forgot what it just basically said. I know where to find Dr. Beckett at the National at the dollar boxes. Yep. That's
Which one?
that's so. All right, guys, let's go. Let's finish on a little higher note, anyway, or what I hope so. Right, next week, Bowman University Inception comes out, and this gentleman you see here, Victor Wembayama, will have his first signed cards in a product. He does have a Sports Illustrated for Kids card, so it's not technically his first ever card, but it'll be his first card coming out of a real brands pack with autos. Also in this product will be Caitlin Clark from women's basketball player extraordinaire from Iowa, and she also will have 2 different autograph cards as well as a base card. Is this does this do much? Is this something you'll collect, Mike? Is this something that excites you? And your thoughts on this? He's saying the next sort of transcendent basketball player, and Caitlin Clark on the women's side, same thing in her own right.
Yeah, so I'm a huge basketball guy. I collect ultra modern basketball as well as vintage, and I watch a ton of basketball, follow the game very closely, and I'm excited about Wembanyama. The hype on him is way too high, and those cards are going to be way overpriced. Caitlin Clark, I'm a huge fan of. I have a Sports Illustrated for Kids card autographed of her that I paid next to nothing for before she got big in March Madness this year. I would consider one of hers after this big buzz dies down later on this year, probably. But the Wembanyama hype is out of control, completely out of control. You can't possibly live up to it.
Yeah, no, I kind of agree. I think he's going to be a very good player. It might even take, a couple years to get accustomed to the NBA game. I know
Game
you're
is a lot easier.
Yeah, yeah.
I think he's going to be great. I think he's going to be a superstar, or at least has a great chance of being a superstar, because the game over there translates very well to the NBA, where there's a lot more scoring. It's easier offensively, but it's just not possible to be as great as the prices are for his things right now.
And Victor must have saw the rookie sign go out into the sky. Here he is. Awesome pre-rookie card. So, Dr. Beckett, your thoughts on maybe this product and the significance of it?
Victor Wembanyama and Kristaps Porzingis. What is the difference? One is older than the other. They're both unicorns. Now throw in Chet Holmgren. What do those guys potentially have in common? And that is fragility and inability to play 82 games a year. So Victor body type is similar to Sean Bradley, who had great skills but got knocked around. So we'll see what happens with Victor Wembanyama. We've got to be, again, I think he's a legitimate number 1 overall pick. You would have to pick him if the Mavericks get the number 1 choice. That's who they're going to pick. But it's one of the reasons I'm in the dollar box. I don't have to worry about that. He's not going to be in there. Caitlin Clark won't be in there either. And that's, what's Caitlin Clark? She's the female Steph Curry, perhaps, launching from 30 feet. So I think it's exciting to have another crop and to be dreaming about how great they're going to be. But basketball is a very physical game. Very physical game.
Yeah, and it's. Oh, go ahead, Mike. Go ahead.
Sorry, John. I think this year's draft is a little like the 2019 draft, which was Zion Williamson number 1, Ja Morant number 2, and Zion was the can't miss prospect, and he's amazing. He's one of the best offensive players right now, but he can't stay on the court. He's played like 40% of his team's games. Meanwhile, Ja Morant is an absolute superstar, minus the drama that he had this year. I think you might see the same thing with Scoot Henderson being better than Wembanyama this year in the long term.
Yeah, but they said the same thing about Sam Bowie,
Yes.
instead of Michael Jordan. So, they're going to go for height, and I think he could be great, but and it's exciting. It's exciting to think about it, and there's eternal optimism.
Yeah, a couple comments. Vintage card collector. Victor needs to put on some muscle. He's talking about Wembanyama, not Roman. Roman is very muscular.
His ankle and not going to help his knee.
Speaking of Victor, Roman, he says spot on to Mike Junkwax Hero for being overhyped when you might have another player that could be potentially better. Orlando says cheaper to get a Jimmy Butler rookie. There's a guy, right? We could do a whole show on guys that don't get enough hobby love for as good as they are, right? Hype is a real thing right here. Ricky says hype good for business. End of the day, only time tells the story. So this is going to be, I think we all can agree it's going to be a very popular product just with what's potentially good could be in your box, right? It's got breakers are going to be breaking this left and right. It'll be interesting to see what the prices go for, what boxes go for on the secondary market with some of these cards in there. Wembayana does not have a base card, I believe. He just has an auto. Caitlin Clark has a base card and actually two subset autos, two different style cards with her autographs on them, I believe, numbered to 99 and numbered to 100. So there's approximately about 200 Caitlin Clark auto. So this will be a product that will be popular. We'll be seeing a lot of it on screens being broke open and seeing what comes out of it, and be interesting.
Yeah, I think the current crop of women's college basketball superstars is going to be really good for women's sports and women's basketball cards too. There's a handful that are really exciting. They're kind of revolutionizing the game.
And we've seen it's a great point too, Mike, because we've seen some of women's cards make strides. Right, some of those early WNBA rookie cards have hit four figures on the secondary market. It's good to see. Not that stuff costs more money, but that they're getting sort of their deserved notice and collectability. And yeah, I think you're going to see more of that, especially with the NIL really becoming huge. And we're hearing names earlier than we ever have before. We're hearing athletes in middle school signing deals in high school, and I think that whether you like it or not, I think that trend will continue, and it'll be interesting to see these card companies. Maybe are we going to see middle school kids potentially sign a deal to be in a Bowman University type of product or that sort of product. But we'll have to see. But uh, that's all I got. What's going on, Mike? Any final kind of take about where people can find you?
Right on my channel by this name, Junk Wax Hero. I'll be at the National this summer. I just picked this card up here. It goes really nicely with the one right behind my head. Oops. I'm going to send this off to get autographed. So I'm really excited about it. I'm a big Yaz collector.
Yeah, no doubt. Dr. Jim, obviously Sports Card Insights, Monday, Wednesday, Friday. I know you just had a great interview with the artist Dick Perez, director Mark Evans. I had him on, Mike Moynihan, Mike Summer. Check all those out. But are you looking? I know you probably are looking forward to that movie. Do you think that will be, a movie that the hobby really kind of seeks out and embraces?
I hope so. I mean, it's going to be a documentary, so it's going to be straight. It's not going to
Yeah.
be sensational, but I mean, Dick Perez has a sensational story, and baseball is America's national pastime. I don't know who's going to play you in the movie. I don't know who's going to play me in the movie. Maybe we can find some of these actors, these good actors.
Look Listen, it's not gonna
Obvious
be Brad Pitt.
actors
Yeah,
saying,
it's not gonna be Brad Pitt, that's for sure, at least with me. You got a shot still, but not me. So I might get Jack Black. I'll be all right.
okay,
If Jack Black can, I like Jack Black. So but one last reminder, just so we can maybe keep somebody out of trouble tomorrow, hopefully. Tomorrow is Mother's Day, everybody. So if significant other, don't forget, right? Stay out of the doghouse. But all joking aside, right? Happy Mother's Day to all the moms out there who get it done. And there's two great things in life, right? Being a mom or a dad. So tomorrow's Mother's Day, and we hope everyone enjoys the day. So. The only thing I'll add, my one quick story. I bought another card for my PC this past week. I don't have it yet. I'm anticipating it. I bought a Hank Aaron rookie card, PSA 3.5. Again, it's talking about eye appeal. Looks better than the grade. So looking forward to getting that. That's my shameless plug for that card. But with that being said, we'll see you a week from today. Same bat channel, same bat time. Thanks, guys.
Thanks, everybody.
I may see some of y'all at the Dallas show.
There you go.
Very cool.
All right. We'll see you.